Okay, today I'm going to change the belts on my SLK R170. This is a 1998. Yours may be different if it's a different year. Now, this car has 20,000 miles on it, so the belts are probably good, but it also has 22 years on it. And I'm just curious that the belts may have stretched over time. I will not be replacing any of the pulleys or the tensioners because I think they would be fine. But I will inspect them, and I'll just kind of review with you what you need to do if you have to replace anything. Tools you will need: 10mm E-socket, very least a breaker bar if you have it, a tool for part of your tool set for your belt tensioner, and your belt tensioners are for this belt right here, and that's your turbocharger alternator belt, and then the power steering and AC are on this belt here, and here, this is the tensioner right there. This is just an idler pulley, and okay, so got my number 10 E-socket, and you won't be able to use a deep socket on there because there's just not enough clearance, and you do get more clearance if you have the tool for your belt tensioner, and you're just going to flex it counterclockwise. I'm trying to hold the tensioner on the camera at the same time. And just pull your belt forward off the tensioner and let the tensioner go. Same thing with this one. Counterclockwise, pull the belt off and let it go. If you find that your socket doesn't line up properly, you just don't have enough room, pull it off your tool, turn it 1/4 of the way, put it back on, and that should have it line up in a different spot. Now for me, as I'm trying to take the tension off to change the belt, this thing was loosening up on me. Now it probably wouldn't come loose during driving because it tightens in the same direction the belt turns, but I want to snug it up, and this hole here is used for locking the tensioner in place. So I'm going to put an Allen key in there, I'm going to flex it back, and there's a plate right behind it if you can see it with holes in it, and I'll slip this Allen key through those holes, lock it in place so this thing doesn't, the tensioner doesn't move back and forth as I try tightening that shaft there. Now, I've inspected my pulleys, they all seem nice and solid, but if you need to replace a pulley, it's noisy or it's loose, this plastic cover comes off. There's a 15mm nut on this shaft that's holding this pulley on. Just undo that nut with the pin through there to hold your tensioner steady. And then same thing if you had to replace the tensioner, or some of the early models like mine has this shock absorber mounted on there. You would take the pulley off, lock this in place, and then undo the bolts to replace that. All very simple, straightforward. This pulley's fine, the pulley down here is fine, and as I said before, I don't think this one has, this other pulley tensioner has any way of locking it, but it's pretty much the same procedure. 15mm nut holding that pulley onto the tensioner. Okay, now belts. I always go with Gates. I've always liked their stuff. Whether it's better than anybody else, I'm not 100% sure anymore. But what's inspired me to change the belts and see if they were stretched was Rock Auto had one of the two belts on clearance sale. Now this is the one that's not on clearance sale. And of course, this is what I always find. This is the one that was on clearance sale. Something that is shop worn, been sitting on the shelf forever. I wish I had a date on it because it looks like it could very well be just as old as the car. So that's what you can expect. Personally, you know, $8, $16, I'd rather just paid $16 and gotten a brand new looking one. Does not look used at all. It just looks like it's been sitting on the shelf a very, very long time. Okay, a quick comparison of the two belts. Lengthwise, the original one maybe a hair insignificant amount longer. but what I do find is that I'm getting cracking within the ribs of the belt, so it's a good thing, I would say, that I'm replacing it. Now putting the belt back on, it goes around the water pump pulley, over the tensioner pulley, back down around the main drive pulley, down around the air conditioner, around the power steering pump, and then back up to the water pump again. And then you're going to want to pull back on this with one hand while you make sure everything's seated in the grooves of all the pulleys, and then you'll release the tension on the tensioner, loop your belt over the tensioner pulley, and then let it go and let the tensioner do the rest. Now if this thing fights you, meaning every time you try to release the tension on the tensioner and this shaft keeps turning on you, what you got to do is pop that cover off, use a deep socket 15 millimeter, and first tighten this shaft down, and then tighten that nut down real tight so it'll act as a lock nut on that shaft. And after that, you should be good. Okay, exact same situation on the front pulley, front belt. Had to take the plastic cover off, tighten down the shaft, tighten down the nut to lock it into place. And what I do is I fish everything around, and then I take my socket and pull it up over the belt and get that into place. And so that kind of holds the belt into place, and then I'll flex back, get everything seated. That's wrong. And then let the tensioner go. Okay, belts are on with minimal blood loss. If you do have an extra set of hands available to hold the belt in place, you will find it much, much easier. Also, you may want to, a week or two ahead of time, take the belts out of the package, even leave them in the sun, so that they kind of stretch out and get the folds out of them, because that will cause it to fight you.